There is something to be said about the beauty of the Catholic faith, and my guest this week is right there with them. Not super anti-Catholic, not necessarily prejudiced against the Catholic faith, but raised Baptist, Pentecostal, Charismatic, has experience visiting a Catholic church in Montreal, Canada, being captivated by the beauty, and really not being able to shake that beautiful experience for the rest of her kind of evangelical existence, until finally reading church history, the church fathers, reading from actual Catholic sources, and eventually giving much up, abandoning much, having to sacrifice much to become Catholic ultimately and join the church. My guest this week is Carla Lynch. She has an absolutely fascinating story of how somebody can become captivated by the church, the beauty of the Catholic Church, and just keep on seeking, keep on pressing on, and discovering again and again and again the beauty, the goodness, and the truth in the Catholic faith that ultimately brought her home to the Catholic Church. Guys, this is an absolutely compelling episode you don't want to miss, guys. So please watch and enjoy. Hey friends, welcome to the show. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on a podcast, guys, your ratings, reviews on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify help to push the podcast out to more people. So please do pause, leave a rating and review, and thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, hello YouTube world, welcome. Thank you for watching, guys. Subscribe to the show, like this video, interact in the comments below, guys. I want to hear what you think of these conversations. This one in particular will be an absolute thrill to have, guys. So please jump in the comments and leave your feedback. And thank you for watching. My friends, I am joined this week by Carla Lynch. I don't want to give away Carla Lynch's story because it's a fantastic one, but she was raised in a mainline Baptist church in Southern Ontario in Canada, baptized at age 18, and began to attend some charismatic youth groups. Didn't we all? Those are great places to be. Attended Protestant Bible College and lived as a missionary in the Philippines for a bit, hoping to convert Catholics into the Assemblies of God Church. A very good exercise. During COVID, developed an interest in the Blessed Virgin Mary and the Rosary, which led her to a deeper understanding of church history and the Eucharist. She joined RCIA and was confirmed in 2023. She's a wife, a mom of 2 wonderful children, living in rural southwestern Ontario, pretty close to me, and facilitates an in-person Catholic recovery group at her local parish. And she is our guest this week. Carla, welcome to the show. Happy to have you, and hello.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. This is my favorite podcast. So,
well, thank you. Now you're on it, so now you have your favorite episode of your favorite podcast can be your own. That's
woohoo!
Listen, this is gonna be a really fun episode. I mentioned before the break, you're kind of in the middle of some bookends here of really cool Catholic connections. So we had a guest on a few weeks or months, I can't think when it was now, but recently on the show, Jana Russell, who you know, and who helped you helped her through this kind of conversion process. And we have coming up in a few weeks or months from now, other folks you're connected with in this story. So there's a cool kind of a series of connections here happening in your story, kind of a thread in a long, beautiful garment of Catholic conversions. That's a weird analogy. I'm sorry, but it's pretty cool to have you here and pretty cool to see these connections. I don't know, the longer that this podcast goes, the more people have other people in common that have these cool conversion stories. That's pretty cool. It's pretty thrilling. But your story is wild. I have a bit of a sense of it, and it's pretty amazing. There's a lot of cool stuff to go in here. So listen, thank you for being here. I'm going to get out of the way and let you unpack your journey. Take us back as far back as you want to go. We'll dig in along the way and go for it. So where does your faith journey begin?
So my faith journey actually began as a little child. So I'm the youngest of 5. Pretty good for a Protestant family, I think. We had 5 boys. We did pretty good. And my dad was a lapsed Presbyterian. He was raised in a very strong Scottish Presbyterian family, which is very common in rural Ontario. And my mom, her family was never particularly religious or anything like that. So growing up We spent a lot of time at the racetrack. My parents did the horses thing. And my first experiences with church was not with my mom and dad. It was actually with the lady who babysat us. And the town that we grew up in, a little town in southern Ontario, it's actually the most church town per capita in all of Canada.
Oh, wow.
There is a church on every single corner, and there's 3 Baptist churches to boot. So she was actually a member of like the African Canadian community that had been there for like at that point like 150 years. And
Wow,
so
wow.
that was my first experience with church, was kind of that like charismatic, like historical like Black experience of church, if you will.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, and I was so drawn to it as a kid. I can remember as a little child, like begging my mom, "Can you please drop me off at her house so I can go to church? Please, please, please." I would beg her to go. And my mom would do it. She was a very busy lady. My mom worked a lot and she made that sacrifice. She'd get me all dressed up and take me to my babysitter's house and we'd go to church together. And I should preface by saying that my babysitter was more like an extended part of our family, very close with her family, very close with her parents. Like I named my son after her dad, like super, super close. So she was a great witness of Christian love to us. And we didn't have a lot of extended family in our area. So they were kind of like, they were our family. And so that was like my very first experience as a kid. Then a few months into going to church with her, we were visiting my grandparents. They live a couple hours away. And I was like, "I'm going to church on Easter morning." And I told my mom that, like, "I'm going on Easter morning, like, no matter what." And so my mom, like, got us all dresses, and myself and my older sister, and we went to Presbyterian church with my grandma. And that was the first time I had ever been to a more formal service, if you will. This was like, that church in particular was more, they weren't like, they were mainline Presbyterians, but they functioned more as like Orthodox Presbyterian. Like they had a bit of a liturgy and a structure to what they did. And it was like beautiful with it was a beautiful church with big, like really tall ceilings and stained glass. And I remember like really loving it, but not connecting to it as a kid because it was outside of that kind of charismatic framework, if you will. And so those were like my earliest experience as a child, like with Christianity and Jesus and the faith. And then we had a really big tragedy when I was 6 years old, going into second grade. My oldest brother died suddenly.
Wow.
It was a crazy tragedy that happened. And he had been once or twice to the Baptist Youth Group, like one of the 3 Baptist Youth Groups in town. This is a town of like 2,000 people, and we had all these churches. But anyway, so in the midst of this, like obviously like horrible tragedy, the Baptist pastor knew my brother, and so he came to one of the visitations or the funeral or something like that, and he stayed in contact with my parents, like to his great credit. And so he invited them like over the next few months, because my brother passed away in the summer, and so over the next few months he would like come back and like just talk to my parents, check on them, how are you doing? And then he ended up inviting them to continuously inviting them to church. And then finally, I remember the first time we went and attended church as a family was for Christmas Eve. I was almost like Christmas Eve Mass, but Christmas Eve candlelight service, as they would call it in the Baptist tradition. So I remember going to Sunday school for the first time with my sister. We were in the same Sunday school class, like for her, because I was not a well-behaved Sunday school child. But as we began to attend, my dad in particular, over the next like year and a half or so, he really took to it. He really took to the gospel. And I didn't so much. I loved the community so much. I loved the people. I loved my Sunday school teacher. I loved the community, and I loved the stability that I could see that it gave my mom and dad. Like it just gave them a stability and kind of like a sense of comfort, like in the midst of the intense grief that it is to lose a child. but I don't know that I really connected to it as a kid. However, when I was in third grade, my dad, he asked me to come with him to a baptism class. He wanted to be rebaptized, which I know is a touchy subject for Catholics, but not so much in the Baptist world, right? So he wanted to be rebaptized. So he invited me to come with him, and they're going around the table asking people at this class, like, when did you accept Jesus? Like, when did you say the sinner's prayer, basically? And I was like, oh no, I know I didn't do this. I must have missed this class in Sunday school. Like, so I'm not gonna lie, I did lie to them. And I was like, oh, like one time in Sunday school or whatever. I don't know why. But anyway, like that night, I literally, sorry, my dad's gonna see this for the first time and be like, all the secrets are coming out today. But, but anyway, so so I went back. Sorry. So I went home that night and like I said like the sinner's prayer, or like I think I made up like some version of it in like my little third grade vernacular or whatever. And but I didn't feel like there was always that promise when you say the sinner's prayer of like, when you really get Jesus, like everything's just gonna turn around. And I was a bit of a problem child, I guess you could say. And I had like ADHD that was like undiagnosed until I was like an adult. So especially in girls, that shows up so differently. So to sit in a classroom was really hard for me. Like, and so I didn't always act the best, I guess you could say. And I really took that on, like, like, oh, I'm sinning so terribly, right? And it just felt like a thing of like I could never like I could never measure up to it, or like the sinner's prayer, if you will, like the accepting Jesus, it never quite like took for me, like as you could say. Like I know that it was deeply efficacious now, but at the time I didn't connect all of that. I just thought like I'm not figuring this out. This isn't getting easy for me, so to speak. But I ended up being that year in third grade. So I think you said I was baptized at 18. I was baptized when I was 8. Sorry.
Yes.
I don't know if I had
no,
sorry.
I probably misspoke.
That's okay. So in third grade, I was baptized at Easter. Sorry, I got pop-ups coming. I was baptized at Easter, and it was a beautiful day. I remember that. Like I remember it was special. It was beautiful. He made me like talk in front of the whole congregation right before, like, it was, but I could do it. I figured it out. And I just remember how happy the pastor was to do it. And he did the Trinitarian form of the baptism. But I don't know that I didn't get it at the time, but that was okay. Like now looking back on it, it was okay that I didn't understand. And so, yeah, it felt like I lived a little bit of like a double life in those years, even though I was really like little. Like at 8, 9 years old, I had really high expectations of myself, and I did live a bit of a double life. I had a lot of high expectations on myself, like regarding sports, and like a true Canadian, I was like a diehard hockey player. That was like the greatest thing, and I really threw myself into that, especially as I got older. And I could see that it got me like a lot of attention, for lack of a better word. But we still attended church faithfully as a family. And I'm so grateful for that, for those years. And at that time in the late 90s, a big thing that I remember being terrified of was the rapture theology. I don't know if this was big in your tradition, but we had a pastor who was a little bit more charismatic and like kind of more Baptist-costal, but like heavy on the charismatic stuff. And part of that at that time, the late 90s, early 2000s, was the rapture stuff. And Left Behind was a big thing. And I remember watching that and being terrified as a kid, and that intense like fear, like, I don't know if I can, like, it's funny now because it's so silly, but like true terror.
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely terrified because I know I'm not good enough. And so is he gonna take me at the rapture or not? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And also, like, you're waiting for all your friends and family to like disappear one day.
Yeah.
It's so scary. It's so, anyway, some people love it. That was not my favorite teaching, I have to say. So, like, I can remember literally, and maybe this is like, the undiagnosed ADHD with like we hyper focus on things, but like, I remember one time when Southern Ontario had this like big power outage.
Hmm.
I was like 12 or 13 years old. It's a beautiful day. Like it's, nobody's got to work. I should be having a great time. We're at the beach with our cousins, and I'm sitting there on the shores of Lake Huron, and I can't enjoy a single thing because I'm like, it is the end times, guys. Like the power is out. Okay. People are like running around. Like we're in the boonies, so
Yeah.
nobody's
Yeah.
stealing where we are.
Yeah.
But everybody's like running around pillaging in the cities, and yeah, the world's ending. So here, like I was so, I don't even think I spoke that day. I was so terrified. Like truly, I'm happy that I can laugh about it now, but like sincerely, oh, that day was a wash for me.
That's amazing. Now, to be fair, we were being driven around by one of our youth leaders in the back of his car, shirtless out the window, driving down like Yonge Street in Toronto in the pitch black, yelling out the window. So our youth group wasn't quite as worried about the rapture, maybe as the Baptist circles you were running around.
Thank goodness, man. Oh, yeah, it was very scary. So, and it just, yeah, I don't know why I clung on to that like little detailed teaching and just was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
terrified myself with it for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Um, and I found, I have to say, like, I found that as a young teenager, before I got more serious about my faith, like a bit of a turnoff for me in that world that would kind of come full circle becoming Catholic was like the focus on like contemporary politics. That was really hard for me to understand, and the way that certain issues would be, or certain like events of history, if you will, like in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Protestant
Yeah.
like political world, would be kind of like glazed over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so especially with like my upbringing and the people that I was really close with, um, I felt like a deep affinity for like racial and social issues and the history that comes along with that. And that was really hard for me to understand like why that wasn't a serious issue in or it wasn't allowed to even be spoken about, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the Protestant like political circles that I was kind of involved with as a kid. I didn't understand how we came to the point of like this issue, this issue, this issue, and we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you know, like
Yeah.
you were such an outlier if you even spoke about other things politically, if you will. Um, but having said that, like I have the utmost respect for that pastor, for the people I grew up with. Um, I think when I was more into the charismatic, I really like pushed aside my Baptist upbringing, and I was, um, it was really heavily pushed on me. Like it was very legalistic. Those people are legalistic. They're this, they're that. But the truth is, like they're just speaking from their tradition. They're doing the best with what was handed on to them. So
Yeah.
I deeply respect all of them, and I actually had the opportunity. I'm a PSW, and so I worked in long-term care for a long time, and I actually had the absolute privilege of taking care of the lady who was my Sunday school teacher. And she
Wow.
was an absolute, like, from the bottom of my heart, this woman was an angel. Like, she put up with me for
Yeah.
like 4 years in her Sunday school class. Like, I don't think I ever sat down when I was in there. Like, I was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
bad. But she was such a doll, the sweetest woman on the planet. And I actually had the privilege of taking care of her when she
I
was in
love
long-term
that.
care
Yeah.
in her later
Yeah.
years. Like, and
Yeah.
she was still like, even with, having dementia and being, she was 101 when she passed away.
Wow. Wow.
I
Wow.
know, but she was still like that same like angelic woman that she'd always been. It was so beautiful. Um, So how I got involved into the charismatic movement, like the PAOC as they call it in Canada,
Yeah.
was my sister started when we were in high school. My older sister, who's a year older than me, she started to attend an Assemblies of God youth group in like another town, like a bigger city where we live. And I kind of would go sometimes, but I was very busy that year. That was my grade 10 year. I was super busy with sports, and I played on like two different hockey teams, maybe three. Anyway, I played a lot of hockey, a lot of basketball, a lot of volleyball. But during that year, I ended up hurting my shoulder really bad. And so going into the summer, I wasn't doing so much in the summer. And my shoulder never really came back properly, so I couldn't really play a lot of sports as the years progressed. But so I started to get to know all these her youth group friends, so to speak. And they were so nice, like they were so loving. I kind of was coming from a world that was very competitive. I loved all the people who were my coaches. I mean, they put up with me like they were saints to do that, because I was a very strong-willed person. But like I loved them all. Like the youth group, like the kids at the youth group were very like welcoming and kind and sweet. And they just had like a new pastor come in, so he was kind of just it was like a fresh wave, if you will, of evangelism for them. And so my sister ended up going away that summer she went on a missions trip to Australia to work with Hillsong in the city.
Yeah.
And it was an awesome, she loved it. Excuse me, like she absolutely loved it. She worked in like the Aboriginal missions in the city with alongside Hillsong. And so that was my first time really being exposed to like the fun nature, if you will, of like the charismatic world and like kind of uplifting sermons. Not trying to be, you know, like it was like just very like uplifting sermons and very focused on like bringing God into your everyday life. And it was very, and like really bringing the Bible alive in a really special way of like, how do we apply this to our lives? And I was so moved by that. And it really began to impact me. And so when she was away, I connected more with her friends, and they invited me to go on the youth group trip to Montreal. And this is where all the Catholic stuff starts. So I'm like a fresh, like, you know, reinvigorated in my faith, if you will, person. And I'm like, you know, really wanting to learn more about God, read the Bible. I'm very excited about these things. But they made the mistake of taking us when we went on this trip. We went to Montreal. They made the mistake of taking us to the oratory, St. Joseph's Oratory of Mount Royal. And it wasn't quite as big as it is now. It was still very big, but St. Andre Bessette, who built it, had not been canonized yet. I believe he had just been beatified at that time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so when I can remember, I had never been in a Catholic church my whole life. I was 15, I think, 15 and a half maybe. And I remember walking up the steps, like this is how, like, I remember so much detail from this first experience. I remember walking up the steps because it's like you're going like this up the mountain, walking up there and looking back down, and they have this beautiful, they call it like the Way of the Cross. So they have this beautiful, like all these steps, these special steps, and a special prayer garden at the bottom for pilgrims that come. And there's people, as you walk up, you look back down, and there's people praying, like they're going up the steps on their knees, and they pray the rosary as they go up or what have you. I was so moved by it. I was just like, this is so cool. And then I remember walking into the main part of the church and just being like I was blown away by it. And my parents were not anti-Catholic at all. Like I don't remember a lot of negativity towards Catholicism as a kid. So I didn't have a lot of the the baggage that another evangelical would have, I guess. And so I remember going in and I'm just like looking at, they have the Stations of the Cross like carved into marble in there.
Wow.
And I'm like, I've never seen the Stations of the Cross. I've never heard of them before. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And there's like all these, you know, like there's like these, huge murals of like, biblical accounts, and you know what I mean? And I remember, and like there in the middle of it is like the huge, like lifelike crucifix with like Our Lady and St. John at the foot of the cross. And then in the back, there's this massive shrine to St. Joseph. I think I'm going to butcher this. People from Montreal are going to be so mad at me. But like, I believe it's like kind of, kind of like behind the main, I think it's like, yeah, I think it's kind of like behind the main altar of the church, this big shrine to St. Joseph. And for me, I remember the other kids and the pastor even were kind of like, I don't want to say sneering, that's kind of a strong word, but I do remember it was just this sense of like, ugh, whereas like I am like, I feel like somebody's like plugged me, like I'm electricity and somebody's plugged me into a wall for the first time. Like I can't believe this stuff. And maybe I'm more of like a visual learner too, because I'm just like, it's just the Bible, guys. Like it's just the Bible. They've carved it into the walls, they've painted it on the ceilings, like this is so cool, and they've been like, to their great credit, like they've been like preaching the gospel to me. So then I'm just like, well, there's the crucifix. Like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like I was just beside myself. This is so neat, And okay. So that moved me like from the bottom of my heart. And I was so moved too by they also still have like preserved like the room of Saint Andre Bessette, like his living quarters, and how they've kept it like how he had it. And I went in there, and it was so simple. It was so simple, but yet like he accomplished so much in his life.
Yeah.
And it was such a profound witness to me. It was so moving. Because the youth group had been really strong on like being radical for Jesus, like giving everything away. And I'm like, well, look at this guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, look what he did, And I was just, I was so moved by it all. And so that time, it really sent me on this journey of like figuring out like, what are those people doing and why are those churches so different?
Yeah.
And why are our churches, like, for lack of a better word, like, why are they so ugly? And like, sorry, like some of the historical Protestant churches are stunning. I'm not trying to be mean, but like, why aren't they pretty like that? Like, what's going on? Why can't we, and I remember going back home and like going to church with my parents and like wanting to do the sign of the cross. And the pastor was like, you can't do that. And I'm like, why? It's the sign of the cross. Like, why can't we do that? And I remember asking my youth pastor, like, I think I want to be Catholic. Like, that's so cool. And he was like, no. Like, he's just horrified. Like, you know what I mean? I told him something really crazy about myself, but it was just, anyway, it was deeply compelling to me. And it sent me on this deep journey. Sorry, I've talked so much about this, but so as high school kind of progresses, I lost interest quite a bit in sports. Like I would play them a bit, but not like I did before. I was more like wanting to be at church, wanting to be, like I just wanted to be at church. I wanted to do the things of God. Like I definitely don't know that I really got a hold on like the Christian life in those times, just because I had a lot to sort out as far as like my upbringing and just like learning how to be, trying to sort out a lot of the theological underpinnings of life. That had to come first because it became very confusing, if you will. But where it all starts to really get confusing is when I was in grade 12, I did a project. And it was to do like, I had to do some research on Christian history. And I watched the documentary version of Lee Strobel's Case for Christ. And one of the things that he says is the case for Christ is the explosion of the Christian church and the ongoing connection that Christians have to those first people. Well, so then the great mistake I then make, right, like many people do, is I start to read what those people wrote.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no. And I started to really dive into like the first and second chapters of like the book of Luke and reading Acts, starting to learn about like the Council of Jerusalem. And I would pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down because it was so disconcerting to me. It was not what I was learning about I don't want to say it wasn't completely what I was learning about. The history, if you will, was not what I was learning about in my churches. I would say that piece for sure. And also like the focus on like faith alone, I didn't see it anywhere in what I was reading. And it was very disconcerting to me. And also like the deep focus on the need and the importance of like righteous living and living a holy life. That was like, whoa. And those were the two things that were I remember they were like rocks. They were like rocks in my shoe, if you will. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I learned from that like, okay, Catholics are Christians. So a year after visiting the Catholic Church, I was, okay, I can pin that down. They are Christians. Because just based on historical fact, like we come from them, which is not something that was ever explained to me. Where do we come from, right? As like Baptists or Pentecostals, you know, in that kind of like low church world, where are we from? And so I learned from that, okay, like they are Christians. And then I felt like a secret that I couldn't tell anyone about because I knew better. But like I felt a deep draw to Mary. Like for me, I was definitely a kid, like growing up. My mom was extremely hardworking. I have the utmost respect for her, but she just couldn't be around a lot. She had a lot of responsibility on her. And I was, you know, the youngest kid, and I just wanted a mom my whole life, you know? And I didn't really know how to be like a young woman. I didn't know what any of that meant. And I was desperate for a mother. And so I had this like secret like draw to Mary through this whole time. But I knew I couldn't tell anybody about it. I had to keep that one locked right up, which is typically, I hear a lot of people in their conversion stories, like Mary's the last thing. And I'm like, oh no, she was the first for me. No big deal. No big deal, guys. So, so I started, that was in grade 12 that I started like getting more into the history of Christianity and understanding how it all fit together. And then I went to Bible college, and it was a really brief program that we did, just like doing a bunch of different types of ministry. It was hard for me to really get into a lot of that stuff because, or like want to really be involved in a lot of those different ministries, just because a lot, I don't know how to say this delicately, but I'm just going to be very honest. My experience was that the Protestants that were out there, like, you know, the evangelicals that were out there, like, you know, doing the incredible work of like feeding the homeless, like all that stuff, they tended to be very, very theologically liberal. And so that was really unattractive to me because I knew enough of church history to know that's a deviation from where we came from.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to stay like on course a little bit, you know what I mean? And I did not want to liberalize like with the times. I knew enough not to do that, if you will. But so I found one ministry that I really liked, and it was when we went at the end of my program, we went to the Philippines, and I loved it. And so I ended up connecting with the main missions agency and ended up going back there. And I lived there in my early 20s. So I did my 21st birthday in the Philippines. And I lived there for 7 months in what is basically like a relocated squatter community outside of Manila. And most of what I did there was secretly talk to Catholics about their faith, because I did sincerely want to learn. Don't tell anybody I did that. But
secrets.
I know, all the secrets are coming out here. But so I would do that. And I did try to convert some Catholics out because I just felt like I had that view that like, yeah, they have like an interesting faith tradition. There's a lot of like richness there, but like they don't have a great community. And I don't know how I would know that, but I just felt like I knew that. I think maybe that's part of like what's preached to us a little bit more in the low church things about Catholicism. So it's like very stagnant and dead and whatever. So I was like trying to pull these people out, which is I'm horrified by it now, but it's all right. But I lived with unbelievable people there, and I learned a lot from them, just of like, loving people, and they were just people they were so much better than us Western Christians, like they gave it all up to go serve God, and that was no big deal for them, and they were there like really and truly like serving the poorest of the poor in the world. And so I taught Sunday school there, I taught girls group there, I did a lot of like teaching English and preschool and that kind of thing, and it was an awesome experience. But it was definitely tough because at that time in my life, I was looking for like some secret, like missing potion, if you will. In that like not having that relationship with Mary at the time, not really having a mom figure. And if I'm being honest, at that time, like I was struggling to understand, like I love God the Father and I have like that strong connection to him, but then Jesus was hard for me to connect to, which is crazy to think about as a Christian. But if I'm being honest, that was a hard piece for me. And looking back, like I'm not sure what that was about, but it was just I think a lot of it sincerely was the low Christology of many of those kind of low church Protestant groups, if you will. Like some of the things that we would get taught and because again, I want to be clear for the Catholics listening out there, I'm not saying all Pentecostals believe this or all Baptists believe this, because in many of those groups, the theology can be very fluid. But I remember like hearing things like, like Jesus gave up like all of godness when he came down here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. And those kind of things. So then I'm like, well, was he like he didn't have any special, like for lack of a better word, like powers when he was here. He didn't really have access to the angels when he was here. And which as a Catholic that sounds insane, but at the time it does sound crazy. But again, these were things that that we were kind of like taught in and out. And I'm sure that there's many Protestants that don't believe that at all, but that was just kind of like, that was the message that I received, if you will. And so when I came home from there, it was just kind of a time of like spiritual dryness, if you will. And that sort of lasted for quite a few years. So in the years in between then, and becoming Catholic, I had a lot happen in my life. So I got married when I was 23, which is very common. I didn't realize like how different that was amongst different groups of Christians until I became Catholic. Like how young evangelicals get married.
Yeah, we sure do.
Yep. So I was 23, and I was actually one of the older girls, like from the youth group, to be married. So I was 23 when I got married. We quickly had 2 children, and I always felt, if I'm being completely honest, like because I had so many questions about, church history, and I just had I struggled to fit into to Protestant church communities, like I was just different, and that's okay. But I was different. I had a lot of questions about history that I just didn't think there wasn't quite the answer. And I had a lot of questions too about politics, because when I got married, the church that my husband and I attended is an amazing church with like literally the greatest people on the planet go to this church. I adore them all. But there was, at the time that we were there was this big push, like a very big like Zionist push. And that's really important in certain evangelical circles. And it can almost be a question of your salvation. if you deviate from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would ask questions about that. I would question that. And I knew enough about church history to know that, like, well, there's Christians living in these other areas. There's a lot of Arab Christians, and that would, I definitely was subversive in saying those things, like, well, why, like, don't we have more in common with them than we would with a non-Christian? Like, I'm confused, like, as to why we have to take this intense role or this intense, like, stance on this political issue. And so I never really fit wherever I went. And then in that time as well, my sister, who's a year older than me, like, when I say that time, I mean, I'm talking about like probably a good 10 years here, because there's so much fluid stuff that went on at the time. But my sister got really into like Reformed Baptist teachers like John MacArthur, John Piper, Mark Driscoll, Matt Chandler, like that whole world. And nothing will make you Catholic faster than if you're a charismatic and you start learning Reformed theology. Very depressing stuff. And I absolutely adore Reformed people. They're like some of my favorite humans on the planet. It was just, I would listen to it, and some of it was, beautiful and really spoke to me. And then some of it was like, this is depressing.
Yes.
This is really sad. And the view of women is very low. Like, that was what I was receiving. I'm not saying amongst the parishioners in their communities at all, but like from the pulpit, it was like, this sucks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yikes, and it was very like, it just was not for me, I guess you could say. But it was the only thing that was like, the Pentecostal world's very non-intellectual. It can be very allergic to intellectualism. Then the Reformed world is highly intellectual. And so I wanted to listen to it because I'm like, why? It's interesting. It's digging deeper into theology and understanding it a little bit more. But it became really like, it just became really stressful, because it was a lot of like, really, it was where I really started to understand the intensity of the differences between the denominations.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And so it was like a really intense, like, this is unbiblical. And like, coming from the evangelical world, unbiblical means heretical. I know what it means. You know what I mean? Because I am one of you. So, so it was just a lot of that. So it was that, and a person like my personality type, I'm a little bit more anxious, if you will, a little more high strung. So I'm like, okay, so this is unbiblical. Okay. And that's unbiblical. Oh my gosh. Like, it was just so scary. You know what I mean? And it's just like, and it would just be, very small details that would be very illuminated with, like, we have to really talk about why, you shouldn't get certain shots, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that, or whatever. And I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush. I'm just saying, like, this with the people that I was listening to, and they were deeply authoritative. That's what I remember about them. That was the first time I really heard Protestant preaching that was like intensely authoritative, in the sense of like, we're right. This is the biblical understanding that is correct. And basically, like, listen to me. You know what I mean? Like, right. So like, they really functioned like popes in many ways amongst their community. So this was like a little much for me. It was really tough. Because it just felt like I just didn't even want to deal with issues of faith anymore. Because I felt like, as a Protestant, I didn't fit into my community. And then I can't figure out all this these wild differences that I feel are a little bit more nuanced, and like, it was just so stressful. It was so stressful, as I remember. And then COVID hit. And that was a rough time in my life. Like my oldest sister was hospitalized at the time, and she had a newborn and a 10-year-old, and I all of a sudden had 4 kids.
Yeah.
I had 4 children all of a sudden, and it was a tough time. And especially here in Southern Ontario, like we would go through hard lockdowns.
Yes. Yeah.
And so in 2021, I came across, just randomly, a Catholic speaker, and he, to his credit, he matched like the energy of a Protestant. I don't know what his background was. I can't even remember his name now, but he just basically kind of laid out what the actual differences were. And he kind of teased out those things of like the Council of Trent and all these sticking issues for many Protestants. Yeah. And I think I listened to him because he was so authoritative in the way he spoke. The loud, you gotta yell to get my attention, I guess. So I watched this whole thing and I was like, oh, okay, that's not as different as I thought. That's interesting. And at the time, I was experiencing like immense amount of like just anxiety and stress over like my like life with having a bunch of kids, and the ups and downs of like, is my sister going to be okay? You know, the health issues in our family, and then my husband's a long haul truck driver, so I'm by myself with those kids.
Yes.
Which is, I was used to it, but it doesn't make it any easier. And so I began to listen to more Catholic influencers, and most of them would just say, like, pray the rosary, you're stressed out, pray the rosary. And so I, like, against my better Protestant judgment, I began to pray the rosary. And within this makes me sound like such a charismatic right now, but you can tell where I came from on this one. But like, it was like almost like probably within a week, I would take like 20 minutes a day. I would pray the rosary along with like a YouTube video, because I didn't know it off by heart. And like the peace of the Blessed Virgin Mary in my life, like, whew, I felt like I can get through another day. I could do it another day. And it was just like this intense calm, and like felt like my insides were being organized. You know what I mean? And so that praying, that it made me want to really understand the Catholic faith more, because I just thought, like, I know now she is who they say she is, you know? And so I didn't really want to walk away from her. And so, and then I came across a Scott Hahn video talking about the Mass and what it is, and explaining that it's the supper of the Lamb. And I thought, the supper of the Lamb, like, that's like the rapture stuff, like but, and then I read a video, I watched a bit of, okay, I'm all mixed up here. I read an article, a Catholic article, about what the Book of Revelations is actually about. And I was like, the anxiety, my 12-year-old self, like, melted away from me. It was like, whew. And so that, coupled with seeing Scott Hahn's video on the Supper of the Lamb, it was like this burning desire to go experience the Supper of the Lamb. Like, I want to go do it. And at the time, our church had just the Assemblies church that we were attending had just like kind of opened up a little bit. And so you could go, I think, in like small groups or whatever. So I remember going, and I believe I was like, might have been helping in the nursery or something like that. And I just had this sense of like, I don't want to be here. Like, I love all these people. They're so sincere. But like, I want to go to like the Supper of the Lamb thing down the road. You know what I mean? And but I didn't really have the courage to do it because it felt like culturally very foreign to me.
Yes. Yeah.
And I didn't know the first thing about like how to reach out and do RCIA. I knew nothing about how that all worked in my area or anything. I was very, very, very naive to it all. So we still kept going for, I think I still went for about like maybe 6 months to maybe a year to that Assemblies Church, like through 2021, the end of 2021 into 2022. But I remember a really distinct moment of like, I shouldn't be going to church here anymore. I feel bad. Was sitting in the nursery again with the most wonderful lady. I just adore her. And we were talking about something to do with like family planning. And I had just read Humane Vitae.
Yeah.
And and like the concept of the natural law was like, whoa, it like blew my mind. Like
Yes.
I
Yes.
didn't
Yes.
go to university. I only got a certificate. Okay. So I wasn't that well read. And so this concept of like the natural law, I'm like, what a common sense like thing. You know what I mean? Like that's so cool. And we're sitting there, and it really deepened my understanding of the Eucharist and why the sacraments are truly doing something. You know,
Yeah.
that God
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
not hold himself back in them, as we should not, you know, in our marriages and in our relationships. So anyway, so I'm talking to this amazing woman, and we're having this conversation, and somehow it got onto like family planning or something like that. And it came out of my mouth. I said, I'm very Catholic on that now. And like I saw the eyes get big. Like, uh-oh, I said the wrong thing. Like I was like, oh no, oh no. And so anyway, but she was really good about it. And I think we ended up like having a little bit of a conversation about like the Catholic faith and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what have you. But that was when I kind of knew like I really need to just go and receive the sacraments. And I was struggling at church as well because I was kind of like, what are we, like I said before, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I was just kind of in that phase, I guess you could say, of like, this is cool and all, but like, this is not the thing. And I knew that. And I knew it wasn't historically what Christians had done. Um, and I also learned like what Gnosticism actually was at that time because we kind of got like the cliff notes on Gnosticism in our like youth group and church growing up that it was like, oh, you know, like they couldn't get married. And I think that was about it because like, you know, anything like pleasurable with your body is like wrong and that was basically it. But when I actually learned what Gnosticism actually was, like the idea that Jesus didn't have a body and therefore like the Eucharist wasn't really him and how that all worked, I was like, oh, like we're like Gnostics. Like I realized that very quickly, which I know sounds, I don't mean it in a harsh way, but I connected that very
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're Gnostics. That's what we are. And it freaked me out a little bit. You know what I mean? Um, yeah. So I ended up reaching out to the wrong family of parishes the first time, got the right one the second time because I didn't know how it all worked, right? I was like, well, I'm just going to send an email to the lady in the biggest city. I think that's probably how the family parishes work. I was wrong. But that's okay. But so I ended up starting RCIA in the middle in March of 2023 because it took me a while to get like the courage to do that. It was really hard for me. But I ended up doing that. And I remember I had this, I knew most of like the Catholic stuff, if you will, by the time I got there. But for some reason, I hadn't connected, this is going to sound nuts, but that baptism was a sacrament. I don't know why. So I remember watching the video with these incredible like ladies that were there. And they start talking about on the video like what baptism is, the mark on the soul, and all these things. And I remembered my baptism at age 8 and how I really thought, oh, that wasn't really a thing. It didn't really matter, whatever. But I was watching and I'm like, God chose me. God chose me when I was 8 years old, and he didn't forget. And it just made that whole journey of my life and like
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
ups and
yeah,
downs and
yeah.
the mistakes that you make as a young adult and whatever, it all made sense. You know what I mean? It's like my baptism was calling me back. Like, this is so cool. I just, I didn't say this out loud, but I was like, I remember being so excited. I like
Yeah.
wanted to like pause the video, like flip the lights on and be like, oh my gosh, why did no one ever tell me this stuff? This is so amazing. Like, I didn't do that though. I kind of kept it together. But, and then, so that was like the only like really big thing I remember from RCIA, like that I learned. Um, but I basically like begged the priest to come in early. So I bothered him, and my amazing like RCIA director was like, she really should come in early. So he let me come in on the Solemnity of Christ the King right before Advent started in 2023. So I'm sorry, that was so long, and I just talked for 54 minutes. Oh my gosh. Your
That was
people
a,
are gonna hate me, your
that was
podcast
no.
listeners.
That was incredible. That was incredible. But I
Sorry.
think that wasn't the. I mean, I know a bit about the next little step of this. I think is equally fascinating, and it's that this wasn't quite where it ended, because there was some really fascinating pushback to your conversion, right? So you weren't. Right, as you said before, your parents weren't necessarily anti-Catholic, right? You weren't raised in that kind of a school of Baptist or charismatic like background, which there is strands of that in those denominations, but you thankfully weren't. But tell us tell us what happened when you were confirmed, because there was a little bit of a spicy pushback, right?
Oh, it got wild. So okay, so the confirmation of my confirmation that I really did receive the Holy Spirit that day, or like more of him, was that nobody had cared that I was doing RCIA. Like, I
Yeah.
was pretty open with most of my family. I at the time was working as an EA at the local Christian school where my children attend. And actually at the time of when I was confirmed, my arm was in a sling because I had just had shoulder surgery from like years, like a very
Yes. Yeah.
Canadian
Yeah.
hockey
Yeah.
injury. And so my previous job from there was at PSW. So I was not going to be able to go back to that job. So I was working as an EA at the Christian school. And I had made the mistake of, because again, I'm not well versed in all of like the anti-Catholicism that exists in other denominations, and I had invited my staff, my peers, my colleagues to my confirmation. Which, looking back, it wasn't a mistake. I did it, and I did it for a reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, unbeknownst to me, like the principal took it to the board, and they weren't happy about that. And so I got pulled into a room about 2 weeks later, and I was basically told like you're gonna get fired. So that was really hard because it was one of those situations where they were like, you have a week to think about it, and I was pretty honest with them. I said, well, I mean, I don't know if I need a week because I'm gonna be Catholic in a week. So, um, but and they were all heartbroken too. Like, everybody in the room was crying. It
Yeah.
wasn't like
Yeah.
everybody came in there with a stiff upper lip. Like, it was rough, like for everybody involved. But they were in a situation with donors and whatnot that was just like, absolutely not. We cannot do this. Um, and then alongside that, my brother-in-law is an evangelical pastor, and my sister, his wife, is they quickly, like in that time of me being confirmed, they started to watch a lot of anti-Catholic programs, if you will. And so my husband and my brother-in-law are actually cousins. So it's an interesting family tree, but that's okay.
Small town.
Yeah, small town, that's right.
Oh no.
So anyway, so we're not related. My husband and I are not related, okay?
Doing the math real fast.
I promise. It's totally legal, above board. So so it caused a lot of conflict in my home in that time. So they started to send my husband a lot of like just really controversial, if you will, or like scandalous, like anti-Catholic stuff. So it was just it was a lot of that, and it was brutal. It was such a hard time. It was so difficult, and um, because I'm losing like for me, it was like I went from I had this job with this incredible like Christian community, and it's just gone like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to talk to me, or we can't have like friendly conversations anymore. Everything's like very surface. And then at the same time, it was hard. I mean, I have to take some of the ownership too, whereas like I was afraid of people now, like to be
Yeah.
completely honest
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
because I'm like, you're like my closest friends, a week ago, and today, like, I have no human rights in your eyes. Like this
Yes.
is
Yes.
scary. Like it really was scary to me. Um, and then like with my sister and my brother-in-law, like my sister's a year older than me. We did everything together. We took care of one another growing up. And so like that, it just felt like, oh, everything like in that time right after being confirmed, it was like everything just got ripped out from underneath me. It
Yeah.
was the most difficult time in my life. Like it really, really, really was. Like I had family members encouraging my husband not to let me be alone with my children so that I couldn't,
Wow.
indoctrinate them.
Yes.
It was
Yes. Yes.
crazy. And like my husband's a long haul truck driver. Like I'm the main caregiver. Do you know what I mean? Like it was really crazy things that like those kind of things that happened,
Yes.
and I did have some close friends at the time that were um like what could you say, like they're like, oh, like we'll still be friends, and like you can still watch our kids or whatever, but then they would do things like, oh, you should drop your kids off at our house so that they don't go to mass with you, and you should do, and it's just like, no, like this is
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
it's very uncomfortable, and people that you think going behind your back in certain situations and being like, yeah, she should have got fired, she should have got this, she should have got that, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have no job to go back to, and I can't go to my former job because I only have use of one arm right now. Like, it was just
Yes.
the
Yes.
most, it was such a vulnerable time.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
must say, like, in that time, like, my relationship with God just like deepened so much. Like, it was just like I could not get away from, like, I just wanted to be at the Mass. I wanted to be, the Eucharist. I had such a calming once I became Catholic, like, of the stress, if you will, of like how to read the Bible, where to find, what you should be reading in the scriptures, whatever. It just like really melted away from me because now it's just like, oh, I just follow the liturgy.
Yeah.
Even if I can't get to Mass, like we have a reading set out for us, like chill out with the Bible studies. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Do your
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? So it was that kind of like just the calm of it all. And then one of the cool things like that is probably been the most important thing that came out of that experience was like I knew deep down I was like I don't want to be bitter in the end of this. Like I want to be, I want to be a better person. I want to be like what the Rosary, what the Blessed Virgin Mary, what Jesus and the Church is calling me to be. That I'm not like, as I had been taught previously, like I'm not, a manure pile covered in snow, which was the common thing of like, we're kind of like, for lack of a better word, like hoodwinking God into like getting into heaven. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
weird,
Yeah.
like that was how I understood the theology part. And again, I'm gonna get like blasted by Protestants on that, but I'm just saying like that was my, common
Yes. No.
understanding
Yeah.
sitting in the
Yeah.
pew, right? And so from that, like that sincere desire that I had of like I really want to be changed. I really want to do different in my life and not have intense bitterness towards people that I feel are like wronging me at this time. And so I was praying. I had been involved in 12-step programs in my life, and like some of the programs that are more for like families and friends of people who struggle with addiction and compulsions and stuff like that. And so the one I go to is called Al-Anon. And at this time, I was kind of like 1 foot in and 1 foot out because a lot of 12-step theology, like again, they wouldn't say that they have a theology, but like a lot of the underpinnings of it, they're really, really, really Catholic. And so a lot of it, I found myself as a Protestant when I was trying to do 12-step work and kind of work on myself in that way, I couldn't really get into it because there's, they say things like you have to cooperate with God. Like that's a 4-letter sentence in the Protestant world, right?
Yes,
Like that's
yes,
a
yes,
bad
yes.
thing, right? To say in many Protestant circles of like, you have to cooperate with God. Yeah, God's going to do his work, but you need to do yours.
Yeah, your work. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep, there's things that you have to do every day to stay well and to stay better. And so I kind of couldn't really get into it all the way, if you will. Um, and also the concept too of like I'm kind of admitting that like I'm not good at being a Christian if I need something like more than the Bible to help me. So that and so anyway, so as I'm coming out of this difficult time, and I'm like, I want to be better, I want to do better. I was praying after Mass, and sincerely from the bottom of my heart, not an audible voice, but like the Blessed Virgin Mary was like, you have a 12-step program and you need to go do that. You need to work that program. And it was like, oh, like I could finally do this without the intense fear of like, is the theology correct? Am I doing
Yes,
this
yes,
right? Am I
yes,
doing that
yes.
right? And I could just breathe and do what I needed to do. And so I started I started looking more into like Catholic specific 12-step meetings because I started to see I'm like, this is so much more similar to the Catholic faith than it was even when I was a Protestant. Like
Yeah.
this is so cool, like how much it all fits together. And in many of like the early 12-step daily like meditation books, they have like quotes from saints and quotes from the scriptures right there on the bottom as like their daily meditation or whatever. And so I was like, this like just all fits together so perfectly, like the sacramental life and the life like that you live in the 12 steps. And so um, I was wanting to be involved more in my parish, and our priest, to his great credit, is always telling people like, we need to serve in our community. And I'm like, I don't really have a lot of skill, but what can I do? I'm like, oh, I know how to chair a 12-step meeting. And so there's a great ministry called Catholic in Recovery. And I contacted them, and my priest gave his blessing, and we started a meeting in our family of parishes. And that's kind of my role in the family of parishes right now, because I'm a busy mom and I don't have a ton of spare time. So that's kind of my thing that I do.
That's
Sorry.
fantastic. That's fantastic. That's an amazing story. I'm not at all disappointed. I don't think listeners and viewers will be either by that tale. That's yeah, I think epic is the right word. That's pretty awesome. And I mentioned before you had a connection to Jana Russell, like our previous guest on the show, a little while ago. Can you tell me a bit about that? Because how did that happen? I'm
Okay, so this is okay. So last summer, the summer of 2024, I went to visit my sister. I live in southwestern Ontario. My sister and Jana, they live in eastern Ontario in the Ottawa area. And so I went to visit my sister, and we went to, Jana was attending before she became Catholic. She attended the church that my brother-in-law pastored.
yeah,
And so
yes, yes.
her and her husband were best friends with my sister and her husband. And they both homeschool their children. So they did a lot together.
Yeah.
And they have kids that are similar ages. And so, yeah, so they were very, very close friends. And I'd heard a little bit of their story, not a lot. But I remember I'm already Catholic, and I go into this house. I go into her house, and I'm like, this lady has like a picture of the Virgin Mary on her wall. Like, this is interesting, right? My little Catholic antenna goes up.
Yes,
And
yes,
then,
yes.
yeah, and then I see like the Baltimore Catechism in her homeschool room. And then I see a Catholic Bible on the table. And then there's What was the other one that really was like, oh, this is definitely a done deal for her? Oh, I saw it. She had Ed Cerise, The Biblical Walk Through the Math,
Yes, yes,
and
yes,
I
yes.
was like, oh my gosh. So so we got a moment alone, me and her, and I was like, so what's the deal with all your Catholic stuff in your And at the time, she had just, they had just started attending Mass
Yeah, yeah,
regularly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so she
yeah.
and I kind of got to know each other
That's
when I was down
amazing.
there, and we went to Mass a few times. And I took her to adoration because that's like my favorite thing.
Yeah.
And so I took her to adoration and kind of taught her like what it was, what we do during adoration. She's like, this is so cool. I'm like, I know, right? Because like just to sort I don't really know that I mention it much during my story, but like when as a Pentecostal, like one of the great things that I deeply respect about the Pentecostal tradition is the deep desire to have that abiding presence of God in your
Yes,
life.
yes, yes.
And that was, so I'm so grateful that I came of age there because I had that sincere desire for
Yeah,
God, like,
yeah.
and to really know his presence was there. And so for me, like the Eucharist and adoration is like, we don't have to wonder, we don't have to wonder if he's going to come. Like, was the, charismatic gift that was shown or whatever would happen in the meeting, like, is that real or not or whatever? It's like, no, we don't have to wonder about any of that stuff. It's like, here he is, you know?
Yeah.
Very point blank. So, and that was just a kind of a tie into the before, but yeah, so that's how Jan and I met, and then we stayed in contact, and I didn't realize how far down the road of like catechism and all that stuff that she was maybe at that time, but they ended up coming into the church a few months later, and I had the great privilege during the Advent season of going and being her sponsor and being her children's godmother. And it was really funny because obviously, like they're converts. I'm a convert. This is my
Yeah,
first time doing this. The
yeah.
the man who was her husband's sponsor is not. He's a cradle Catholic, lovely guy. And I was like, what do I do next? What do I do next? I stood next to him, like, I have no clue what I do.
Oh,
Yeah, it was great though. I'm sure the priest was very entertained.
that's incredible. And I love that you kind of met through your evangelical pastor brother-in-law,
Yes,
connected these two great families, groups of Catholics, you and them. That's an amazing story. I
big
love that.
tie-in.
I, I,
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that, so what you just said, I think too, is so important. And there's obviously tons we could dig into. We don't have 10 hours, but we could probably talk for that long. And it is that like there's that thing at the core of like charismatic Christianity, right? That just desires more of Jesus, right? We sang these songs of wanting more of Jesus. We had altar calls, right, in the charismatic churches, right?
Mhm.
These were things that desired as much of God as possible and always focus on surrender of us, of our stuff, right? The altar call was, okay, what do you have to give up to God on this so-called altar? There's no real altar there, of course, in a Pentecostal church, but we come to the front, right? The front of the church, which was, I guess, kind of like the altar, right?
Yeah.
And for real, like, want to sacrifice something, right? Whether it's like my CD collection, like when I'm in like high school in the youth group, or like that bad relationship, right? Or those friends that I shouldn't be hanging out with, right? Or whatever. You're sacrificing something. And then of course, as an adult, like it's more serious things, right? It's like you're surrendering to God at the altar, like your freedom, your job, your employment, your finances, your family. There was that sense in charismatic Christianity that we should be sacrificing something, and with that desiring more of God, right? And
Hmm.
like so many converts from that have a background of some flavor of charismatic Christianity recognize, right? We do that in the Mass, in the Catholic faith, that is deeply central, right, to what we're doing there, right? In the Mass, it is a sacrifice. We're joining our sacrifice to Christ's ultimate once and for all, right, unbloodied sacrifice, right, on the
Hmm.
cross that's represented to the Father in the Mass, right? That cosmic linking of time and space of Christ offering himself to the Father, right?
Hmm.
And we're meant to as well bring our own sacrifices to join with that in some kind of way. And there's
Yeah.
that real abiding presence. There's that more of Christ that we always sang about right there, right on the altar in the
Yeah.
Eucharist, right? So
There's nothing more charismatic than the Mass.
no, yeah, there's nothing, right? And I think like I so many guests on the show. I'm thinking of Kenny Burchard in particular, 20 years as a Protestant pastor, a Pentecostal pastor, right? Who said, if we can just get charismatic Christians to recognize this, to see with charismatic eyes what's happening there, right?
Yeah.
I think we'd have maybe in droves conversions to the Catholic faith, because it is, like you just said, right, the most charismatic thing we can imagine. Right?
Absolutely. It definitely is. And like just the exchange that happens in the Mass is so unbelievable, and I feel too that I think it might, well, I mean, we would say this, but like it would fix a lot of those issues I think that go on in charismatic churches, as far as like sometimes because the Christology gets quite low, it's like this anything goes kind of thing, but it's such a beautiful transaction that happens. Like, what is more central to the gospel than like we give like our little human pittance to God, right? Like what we do in our lives that he loves and cherishes, and then he gives himself back to us. Like, what is bigger than that? Like, what's better than that? Like, I want that. And I don't do anything to earn that. I don't earn the sacraments, like I'm not good enough to go to confession. I'm not good enough to go to the Mass, right? Like these are things that are freely given to us by God.
Yeah. Well said. Okay, I think I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And there, of course, there's tons to unpack here, so I don't even know where to begin. But I'm trying to find.
Me neither.
It's an amazing story. But you talked about how when once you kind of became Catholic, there were these anti-Catholic videos going around and stuff, and these kind of things. And I think the other major thing that you realize when you cross the Tiber and become Catholic, or begin to seriously read about the Catholic faith, is so much of the stuff that you see online, that you read, that you hear from the pulpit, right? If you're in a kind of an anti-Catholic kind of strand of Christianity, it is so much misconception and misunderstanding, right? And once you begin to hear it enough, and you've read enough to realize that it's totally crazy, it's almost like it drives you insane, because you're like, wait a minute, but that's not like what you're attacking in this YouTube video,
Yes.
right? Or this this chick tract, right? Isn't actually what Catholics believe, right? So you can set up this kind of straw man all day long and say, oh, well, Catholics teach this and this and this. Mm-hmm. But once you begin to actually read enough from the Catholic faith, even still as an evangelical, I certainly did this, and I think you did too, and lots of listeners and viewers of the show and guests of the show have been in that same place. You begin to read enough and you go, actually, what that person's attacking isn't actually what the Catholic Church believes. It's a misconception. And you realize what the truth of that belief is, and you go, well, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And actually, I think I believe that, right?
Yes, it certainly is. And I would say like it's like the Catholic misconceptions, a lot of them come from a deep misunderstanding of the Bible that goes on in many Protestant circles. And so I think some of the ones that were really hard for me, the best people to explain them, I felt, were like Eastern Catholics or Orthodox Christians. They, I remember, because I think maybe their culture is a little more direct, if you will, but I loved this one video of this Orthodox, he's a Greek Orthodox priest. And he was kind of like teasing this Protestant guy, like fun-natured, about the concept of like the saints, And he's like, oh, so you think, the Orthodox priest is like, you think that when people die, boom, they're just gone and that's it. And when he described, he said, no, like we're the church militant and the church triumphant, and we're one body. And Jesus said that whoever believes in me will have eternal life. We just actually believe it. And I was like, that makes so much more sense. That makes so much more sense. And where in all sincerity, like to the Protestants, like, nobody could answer me that question. Okay, like what happens to us then when we die and we're Christians? Like I don't get it. I thought we have eternal life.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just those kind of things. I think like and I would say too, like, sorry, with regards to like history and that sort of thing, like that is something like just pray and just read the actual
Yes,
history
yes,
of the
yes,
church.
yes.
Many Protestants, for lack of better word, they have a very Mormon understanding of church history, where it's like this thing of, yeah, it all fell apart in like the third century. Some people say it fell apart in the second. Some people say it, there was always this, antichrist church with alongside the other church, even
Yeah.
though there's no historical evidence of that at all. Like I've read up on it, there's none. Um, and just don't be afraid to actually look at the sources that many anti-Catholic, like Protestant people or people in general are saying to you. Like read the footnotes yourself
Yeah.
because it is wild. Like they really are all Catholic,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
church
Yes.
fathers. Like,
Yes. Yes.
and I think for me, a big question that many Protestants have to ask themselves, and I had to ask myself this too, is when you are looking into like the history of like the oldest churches in the world, say, various places in the Middle East, whatever, the oldest Christian communities, they're not Protestant. Why not? And I had to ask myself that. Why aren't the Armenians Protestant? Like those kind of questions. They've
Yeah.
been the most, right? Like, why in Lebanon they're all Maronites? Why? Or they're like Orthodox. How come? Why are the Coptics like Orthodox or Catholic? These people have been so isolated from the rest of Christianity just by nature of geography and, like geopolitics, but they've never become Protestant. Why not? Like somebody tell me that. Like I never could get a straight answer about that. And so I just think like just ask yourself the deeper question as a Protestant and do the research for yourself. Like because, you know, just do the research for yourself. And I would say for Catholics, like, you have those Protestant friends that you love, look at it through their eyes. Like they have a lot to lose when they cross that river. It's not a joke. I think that sometimes Catholics can be very naive to the intensity of anti-Catholicism and the real differences between denominations because to the great credit of many priests and deacons, they're very, very charitable from the pulpit, as we want them to be. But like just understand like it's a big cost to cross that river for a lot of people. So yeah. That's my soapbox.
That's fantastic. I have so much to say, so much I could add, but I don't want to add anything to that. That was very, very well said. I love that, Carla. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being here for this awesome conversation. I don't know, and I asked this of all the guests. Obviously, some guests have things they want. They've written the amazing things that they've done. They can link to. Do you want me to put anything in the show notes? Are you working on a fantastic memoir that's coming out soon? Or resources, things that you think are important that I can put in the show notes? What do you want to say as we wrap this up, Carla?
I would just say if you're a Catholic or anyone struggling with addiction or codependency or anything like that, like check out Catholic in Recovery, and they're really great resources. And don't be afraid to like. One of the things I love about being Catholic is that people will tell you what the church can and can't help you with,
Yeah.
And so don't be afraid to like go to secular meetings and just get yourself help if you need it. So. Random side note, but just letting people know.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Carla, an amazing conversation. What a story. And thank you for making my job easy this week on the show by talking for, it might be I gotta check the record books. It might be a record. 54 minutes might be a record. I'll have to look back and let you know. I'll put a little note here somewhere in the show when I edit it to see. But that's well done. Well done. Listen. Thank you truly for being here. Thanks for this awesome conversation. God bless you, the work you are doing for the church, and thanks so much for being here. This is awesome.
Thank you, Keith. I'm so grateful. Thanks for having me.